AI is a choice. It's a choice we can make if we insist on it.
I've been so unsettled because of AI as such. I would like to give them some answers in order for them to, kind of not be so afraid of.
I think you should think a lot about what it can do and the positive potential it has. It needs to be directed. It needs to be sort of fenced in. We need to make conscious choices about what we want, but it has tremendous potential for everybody. So don't be worried. Get educated.
What is the biggest illusion people have about AI right now?
I think the biggest illusion is, like I said, that it's not something we can control, and it's not. And some people even think it's not something we should control. I think we need to be aware. I think we need to learn. I think we need to say what kind of society we want. Basically, because it is an illusion that we don't have an influence. We've been talking about for a while now that AI won't replace you. It won't take your job, but somebody else with the knowledge of AI will take your job.
That's people doesn't understand.
And I think people should learn, but it doesn't have to be a chore in that sense. It can be something fun. And that's why I'm always proposing use it in your personal life, because that enables you to learn faster. Another factor in this that most people, I think, overlook is that any new technology, when it becomes embedded, so to speak, in everything we do.
Hello to everyone. Today we will talk about real AI power and what it's doing to human life. And I'm joined by Mark Sinclair of Fleeton, a journalist, AI communicator, and the founder and editor-in-chief of AI Portalen, one of the Denmark's sharpest space for making sense of artificial intelligence. Mark has spent years bridging tech and society, asking the tough questions about what AI is doing to truth, power, and our everyday life. Welcome, Mark. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So what is AI really, and what do you think it was originally meant to serve?
Well, as a complex question, really. I think as a start, there was mainly two thoughts about AI. One was the curiosity, exploring new technology, and especially exploring what the human brain was. This was, in the beginning, a lot of people thought this was a way of learning more about the brain if you built something similar to a human brain. And the second part was the thing that we are using very much today, using these systems for automation of different tasks that is usually carried out by humans. So I think there was a dual purpose already from the beginning, and it's only now, right now in these times, that it's been fully realized. But we've been talking about it since the 40s and the 50s.
So in a very simple way, what is AI for those who actually might be confused about this and they don't quite still understand?
It's easy to misunderstand, and I understand the concept, because there is a lot of discussion about what is artificial intelligence, but basically it's about having computer systems doing tasks that is usually done by human beings. That's the most basic definition I could come up with.
Yeah, sure. So what do most people still not understand about AI?
I think the most crucial thing to understand is that this is a tool. This is something we can use for different tasks and so on. It's not something magical or something. In a sense, it isn't even complex. It is a tool that we can choose to use, and in that sense, it's not inherently good or bad. It is what it is. Any tool can be used and misused, and I think that's one of the most important things to understand. also because a lot of people feel, maybe scared isn't the right word, but you maybe you're a bit worried, you don't quite understand what it is. And I think it's helpful to think of it as a tool, something you can use and you can learn to use it.
Might be some of them they are scared, some of them they are afraid. But why do you think, from your point of view, why do you think they are so afraid of?
I think basically what people is afraid of is what they don't understand.
I totally agree with you. Yeah,
and
that's why you're here today.
Yeah, no, and it's understandable because on the surface it's a lot about math, it's even about philosophy and so on. It can seem very complicated, but I think it's very helpful if you start to focus on what can it actually do, what can I use it for, what kind of tool is this that we're dealing with, and this is what you need to focus on in order to understand it. You don't need a deep mathematical understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. I think it's more important to understand what is the possibilities and what can I use this for? Should I use it even?
What is the biggest lie we tell ourselves about AI?
I think we fool ourselves in a lot of ways when it comes to AI. I think the worst one is that there is some kind of built-in inertia. There is a built-in inertia of the development, but it's not written in stone. It's not that AI has to develop in a certain way and it will, per definition, develop in this way. We need to understand that the ones who are controlling the development of AI is us. It shouldn't be left to the tech giants and so on. We all have a say in this because this affects all of us.
How actually we can have this control? Most of people are afraid and scared, etc., because of that, because they think and have the perception that they don't have the control over them, data, etc., or their personal life or professional life.
In a sense, they're right. They don't have the control. As long as we let the big tech giants control and have a monopoly, so to speak, on developing these systems, they don't have a say. But it doesn't have to be like that. One thing is we can make legislation, we can make standards and so on that puts guardrails and stipulates conditions of how these systems have to work. And we can, in Denmark, we're talking a lot about digital, and in Europe for that matter, we're talking about a lot about digital sovereignty. And I think that's part of the key, that we need to develop systems ourselves. And that is based on our value systems and what we want from the technology.
What do you mean by that?
When I'm talking about systems, I'm talking about AI systems.
Okay.
In the different senses that we're using them right now.
So if AI is a mirror, what is it showing us about humanity?
That's a good question, because I think one of the things that it's showing us is the way that we have set up our societies is reflective of a certain way of viewing the world. And this reflects in the data that the AI systems are trained on. It basically means that there are more data about white males around 50, my age, than there is about women, than there is about people from other places than Europe and so on. And so it mirrors, in a sense, an outdated way of looking at the world. And that is a great weakness also in how we develop the systems, because they don't understand as well anything that is slightly divergent from the norm.
What is AI quietly changing in us already?
For one thing, it's changing the way we do education and the way we do research and so on, and we need to change as well and to understand how we're using these systems. I mean, there's a problem in the education system. The teachers have been for quite some time now speaking up about cheating with AI, which basically means that students don't learn what they have to learn, and it doesn't have. I mean, that's also a lot in the way you teach. How do you choose to use AI in teaching, and not let it take over? Because if you just write your papers with an AI and don't make your own, do your own work, then you won't learn. And that's a problem. And we need to. It's not just the teachers and the professors who are responsible for this. It's also the students. We need to take on the responsibility of our own learning, basically.
We have read an article lately about a teacher. She gave to her students a task. Most of the answers was quite the same, because in substance they used all of them. They used the ChatGPT or other AI tools, and to make them do something, really, to make it short, she proposed one simple thing: to just be critical about their assignment, about their task, what they wrote into the assignment, etc. So I do believe, as you just mentioned earlier, that might be from the teacher side point of view, should actually take action as such and be a tiny bit, slightly bit more creative, into kind of push the the students to kind of be more original, authentic. Even though they might use AI tools, it shouldn't be a huge, immense problem.
Yeah, I think that's the point exactly, and it's also about using. I mean, teaching the students to use AI as a tool in their education. How can you use it for research and so on, and build that into how the way you teach. Set it as part of the task. Use ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever, for doing your research. What does it tell you? Ask questions of it. Be critical about how it works, and especially if you have it write your paper, be critical of it. Edit the paper. Go through it again, and take an active stand in this. I mean, understand what it's doing, and check if it's right, because you'll learn a lot from that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So what part of being human can AI never touch?
I think being human is something very specific. I mean, the human experience is not something that can be touched. I mean, it will change us. Like every major technology changes the way we live and the way we think and so on. But I don't think it will basically change the way of the human experience as such. It'll just be different, as it always is. It is something evolving, as it has always been.
If AI keeps growing, which I do believe it will, what must humans grow to?
We need to be aware. We need to understand what it does, and use it as a tool. View it as a tool. We need to not just sit back passively and let it take over everything. We need to decide where is it most useful. How can we make use of this new technology to enhance what we already do, what we already are? I think that's one of the most important things, is that we have to be critical. And that's not to say that I'm against the technology. Far from it. Quite the opposite, really. But I just think that we won't make the most of the technology unless we are critical about it.
Yeah, definitely. Also understand the flaws and the pros that actually might come with it, because it is about that, having the right information, the information as such, using it wisely, and have the responsibility of how you use it and how much you use it and for what are those purposes, and etc. And actually, I have another question regarding this, is how actually they can use it as a tool. I know it's a very simple question, might be for you, but there are still people that they don't know that there is a tool, actually AI, and that it can be very useful. Use it as a tool, as simple as it is.
Well, you could use it both in your work and in your private life. I mean, as a journalist, I use it for research. I have it write ideas for articles. I use it for creating ideas. I use it for asking questions, and it use it to ask questions of me in order to make me sharper at whatever it is I'm trying to find out about. So it can be used in just about any. If you are in if you're in a factory, it can automate a lot of the processes in the factory, from quality checking and so on. It's basically a tool that can help us in almost every part of our work. As a private person, you could use it for something like planning vacations, planning your shopping, planning your diet, whatever. Basically, it's an assistant. It's like having a secretary to take care of all the practical in your day-to-day life. So maybe you can save time to do something that you think is more interesting, really.
Mm-hmm. What should scare us more, AI itself as such, or the people who are using AI?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's very useful to be scared about this. But when you put a question like that, of course, when there is a threat, it's from the people who build it and from the people who use it, because basically AI is what we make it, what you use it for. Like I said, as a tool, if you use it for the benefit of everyone, it can be fantastic, and if you use it for personal gain, it can be terrible. So don't be scared, but be critical and ask questions and have an opinion.
Yeah, definitely. What actually made you so interested in AI in the first place?
Well, it was a sense of irritation, basically. When ChatGPT came out 3 years ago, I realized that I hadn't seen it coming. I've been reading science fiction, and I was interested in tech even then, but it was a complete shock to me that ChatGPT appeared suddenly and what it could do, and I could tell very fast that this is going to change pretty much everything. So why hadn't I seen it coming? So that's basically when I started looking into it, sitting down, reading books, reading reports, reading articles, so on, trying to find out what is this thing and where did it come from. And I realized that most people that I was around felt the same way. Whoa, what happened there? And a lot of people didn't realize that this was going to be important, and this is going to make a big difference in their life, and I still think they don't. Most people don't realize how much of a change it will really be. So that was my starting point, and this is what drives me today, even.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What you are using for example, currently AI, you personally?
Well, I use AI every day. I use it very, like I said, I use it very much for research in my work. You have to be critical, of course, but it's still, it saves a lot of time in my work. Also, if I've done an interview like this, having it do the transcription, that used to take hours to write out. If it was an hour-long interview, it used to take hours, and now you can do it in, I don't know, 5 minutes sometime, and you have to make sure that it's all right, but it still saves you a lot of time. I use it to plan my shopping, like I said, my grocery shopping, mostly. I occasionally use it for planning vacations, and just basically, I also use it a lot for developing my business as an independent reporter. I use it as a sort of discussion partner to develop ideas, new ideas, and how to develop the business, basically.
It's like can be critical as we are as humans, AI as well, or you have to create a lot of prompts in order for you to kind of have a more different or a more ideal approach of how are you and how is your personality. And that's why I'm saying can be also critical and think critical and give you a response as critical as a human or not. Or until a certain point.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. It won't as a default. You have to prompt it. I don't use agents, but I use GPTs, which are sort of these specialized versions that you set up yourself of ChatGPT. And I always instruct them to be critical. And if I don't feel they're critical enough, I will restate it in a prompt. Be critical of everything that's said here, because as a default, it will tell you that everything you've done is fantastic and it's great and you couldn't do any better. And I mean, it's nice to get a sort of self-confidence boost once in a while, and it's great.
Yeah, for an ego, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But you do need the critical thinking, but you couldn't get it if you ask for it, and if you insist on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. What feels most hopeful or promising to you about AI if we use it wisely?
I think what's most hopeful is the potential for societies that are more equal, both on a social level and an economic level and educational level and health systems and so on. That is the most promising aspects of this technology. But again, that means we have to choose that is what we want. So without being too much of a doomer, so to speak, I think we need to make conscious choices of what we want and what we're going to let happen, because right now we're on a path where that doesn't necessarily happen, at least not completely how we want it. So, but it has enormous potential if we use it in the right way.
Do you think we should be worried as humans for, I don't know, looking like 2 years ahead from now?
Again, I don't think it's very useful to be worried or scared, but we have to be conscious of where we're going and what we want. And that's what I'm also saying. AI is a choice. It's a choice we can make if we insist on it.
Asking for those who actually might having this feeling of or been so unsettled because of AI as such, I would like to give them some answers in order for them to, kind of not be so afraid of.
I think you should think a lot about what it can do and the positive potential it has. It needs to be directed. It needs to be sort of fenced in, or whatever, how you want to put it. We need to make conscious choices about what we want, but it has tremendous potential for everybody. So don't be worried. Get educated.
So again, AI is moving really fast. Do you think society is keeping also up emotionally or not?
I don't think we're keeping up on any front, and this is natural when it comes to new technological developments. We're always lacking. We're always behind. We always have to catch up, but we will. I think we will, definitely.
What does AI changed about the way we trust information? Also on social media, for example, in so many other cases, as you just said, because it is about automations. In the first beginning, it was used and created mainly for that, and then just spread in so many areas of our life as humans.
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that makes it difficult. I mean, the generative AI systems is able to produce both text and pictures and now videos who are very, very, very lifelike. And sometimes it's difficult to tell what is real and what is not. So we need to get better at that. I don't think that in itself is a problem, because in a way it will make us more critical. I think this will happen all by itself, because we know there's a lot of this stuff out there, and we know that there's fake news and there's fake videos and all those things. But the problem is the number of these things. I mean, the scope. There is so much being put out there, so many fake videos, so much fake news, and so on. It's difficult to keep up with it, and it's difficult to separate. It's difficult to be critical when you get this much information at one time. So that's why we need to regulate and to constantly develop new systems that can help us discern what is right and what is wrong.
So what we can actually tell, or when we can tell what is real and what is not online, that's the point.
It's difficult. I mean, if you noticed, a lot of the AI videos that are put out there now, the responsible producers actually label the videos. And if you look at most videos, you can tell there is something off about it. So be critical, and I think a lot of it is being exposed to it. And just being exposed to it will make us more aware of this is probably generated, and this is probably not true. But we need to develop systems all the time that can help us and discern one from the other.
Yeah, definitely. What is the biggest illusion people have about AI right now?
I think the biggest illusion is, like I said, that it's not something we can control, and it's not. And some people even think it's not something we should control. I think we need to be aware. I think we need to learn. I think we need to say what kind of society we want. Basically, because it is an illusion that we don't have an influence over this. We do.
Do you think someone make us believe that we can't control it, but the point is that we actually have the will of controlling, or those who actually have more power kind of want to lead us to believe and perceive that we don't have the control as such, or it's just us that because we don't have the right information, the amount of right information in order for us to understand and process all this info, in order for us to really truly understand and perceive that, oh, this is really, it is really a tool that actually can be so helpful in my daily life or personal life, as you just mentioned earlier, that helps you with so many tasks, that makes you spare a lot of time.
I think it's both. There are definitely interests in pushing the current systems out there and having control from the people who develop the systems. But there is also the point that we have a difficulty understanding what it is, and then have a difficulty relating to the whole thing, what's going on. And it's easier to just sit back and say, oh, they probably know what they're doing. So it's both things that are real right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the sense that they do have a lot of power right now. You could be scared about what could potentially happen. I mean, what happens to our personal freedoms? What happened to freedom of speech and so on, and our democratic rights? But again, if we insist that these rights they do belong to us, and these people shouldn't have this kind of power over us. So rather than being scared, I think we should do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And then who is gaining power through AI and who is losing it?
Right now, definitely the people who are developing the systems is gaining a lot of power, both economically, but also over the way we think and how the systems are developed. What are the limits of, or lack of limits in some cases of the systems? So there is a concentration of wealth and power in in Silicon Valley, basically, right now, and I think as far as we accept this, that is you and I, but it's also Denmark, it's Europe, and so on, are losing power, both on an economic but also on a political level right now.
How do small countries like Denmark, for example, avoid becoming dependent on big tech?
We do it by not thinking about ourselves as a single unit. Denmark in itself, I don't think, can become independent. We have to think of ourselves as part of something larger, the Nordic countries, the European Union. And from those units, we can create systems that we control, that can actually compete with American or Chinese systems. So basically, it's how we view ourselves that makes the difference of what we're able to do.
So, do you think Denmark is in a bigger suitable position regarding this theme than other countries in Europe, for example?
We are one of the most digitalized societies in the world. So we are better, some ways, better prepared, but it doesn't mean that Danes are necessarily smarter when it comes to AI than anybody else. We're just used to the systems. We have a head start in some ways. But again, we need to realize that we can't do this. I mean, I'm all for, there are a lot of Danish initiatives that are being developed, systems in Denmark, both on the social media front, but also very much on the AI front. But I think we need to expand these ideas to a European level in order for it to actually work and being able to compete.
What happens to democracy when AI shapes what we see and believe?
Again, that's an interesting question, because it is very much up to us what do we want to happen with democracy. I've just written quite a few articles in AI Portalen about how AI can be used as actually involving citizens, we're always talking about how AI is a democratizing technology in a lot of ways, and it goes for democracy as well in itself as well. It's not just about making knowledge accessible and so on, but it also can enable the ordinary citizen to have a lot more of a say in the political process. So if we want that is a way we can use. There are definitely experiments in Denmark as well with involving the citizens in day-to-day decisions. And we've seen countries like Taiwan is very far ahead on involving its citizens in its decisions. We've had experiments in places like Barcelona, who's created a system called Decidem. I'm not sure about how they pronounce it, if it's more of a Spanish, really. And that has been used in several European countries right now as a way of trying to involve. It's basically systems that allow you to participate both in a debate, but also making political proposals and react to political proposals from politicians or so on. So there are some very, very interesting possibilities that are being experimented with right now. But again, if we don't use them, if we don't choose that as the way we want to go, then our power will diminish. The democratic system will be weakened by this.
Use the hands on any type of AI tools, etc., or bring it into our lives. those people might encounter in their current life and in the short timeline, like personal issues or professional, most of all, because they don't have any, and I mean any, knowledge at all about AI as tools and how they are used, and what for, or specifically for certain type of automations, for example, because they're so integrated nowadays on the digital marketing or branding or.
Yes, I think you will have a problem, and it sounds very brutal when you say it, that you will have a problem if you don't learn these systems. We've been talking about for a while now that AI won't replace you. It won't take your job, but somebody else with a knowledge of AI will take your job.
That's people doesn't know, doesn't understand. Exactly, I agree.
Yeah, and I think people should learn, but it doesn't have to be a chore in that sense. It can be something fun, and that's why I'm always proposing use it in your personal life, because that enables you to learn faster, because it will be interesting, it will be fun to do it in that way. But there's also another factor in this that most people, I think, overlook, is that any new technology, when it becomes embedded, so to speak, in everything we do, we stop calling it AI, whatever. We start calling it what it is. So when we're talking about automations in factories and so on, it's just another system to learn. And the same thing, it's like it's like using Word or Excel or whatever. Exactly. These are just new systems to learn, as you've always learned new systems in your work. So don't necessarily be afraid about it, and don't think about it as something very complicated. These are tools that you can use every day, and it's not complicated to learn.
Mm-hmm. So what should be not non-negotiable ethical rules for AI, for using AI?
Yeah, these are the basic ethical basics that we're always talking about. We have to design these systems with humans in mind. You need to focus on things like dignity and rights and non-discrimination, transparency. We need to be able to see what goes into the system, what are the basis of the decisions that are made, and safety. How do you protect something? And we're always behind on the safety part. Like I said, we're always catching up, and the same thing is on the safety front. There is always people testing the safety of the system. So you can't be completely safe, but it has to be a focus point. And then of course, privacy. Privacy is basic to all of this. How do you protect the data from all of us? When you were talking about it before, putting in all this information into the systems, how do we make sure that it isn't misused or it gets to the wrong people and so on?
Where do you think we are already crossing a dangerous line?
Definitely on the privacy front, because this is something that we have been, ever since the social media arrived, we have been used to making sort of a trade-off. We tend to give up a lot of our privacy in order to gain convenience, and this is going to be even more pressing with AI systems. So we need to be aware that we're giving up. Some things are not problematic. I mean, I use it a lot. I put a lot of information in there. As a reporter, you could, as a journalist, you could say that I have a product that has a certain value, but the systems also has a certain value to me. So I don't mind so much being part of training the system by putting my product into the system. My articles can be are in the system, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind that too much, but we need to be aware of what it is. What are the consequences of the information that we put in?
Do you use the paid version so you can protect actually your personal data as such, or information, whatever those might be?
I use sort of the middle level, the middle level. So, and I'm always going on the premise that everything I put in isn't safe. It's the default starting point I'm always at, because that makes you think about, should I put this in? Shouldn't I put this in?
So what does it mean to stay human in a world of smart machines?
You could turn the question around and see, can we be anything else than humans? I mean, we're not going to be turned into machines, not in that sense. I mean, you could talk about cyborgs and combining human and machines and so on, but basically I think we are human, and that's not going to change. It's not going to remove our emotions or intuitions and so on.
When you think about the future, what do humans need to protect the most?
I think we need to protect our democracies. That is one of my biggest issues right now. That we're also because we're questioning authorities and so on as a result of both social media and AI and the amount of fake news and so on that's out there. We need to protect our societies, and we need to develop our societies as well. That's one thing at least I see that we need to protect.
Mm-hmm. If you could tell to our listeners one simple truth about AI, what it'll be?
I think again the most simple truth is that it is a tool that you can learn and you can use. And you need to think of it that way, because that also gives you the control back, in a sense. It at least gives you a sense that you have a choice. You can make your opinion heard and so on, because it is a tool, and that means you can make demands on what you want the tool to be able to do and how it has to function and so on. So I think that basic understanding of this technology as tool is crucial to our handling it and not being passive and accepting whatever happens.
So I have a final question. Actually, it's a reflection more than a question. I call it a note to your past self ritual. If you could go back and sit with your younger version of yourself, right? What did you tell him about responsibility, courage, or protecting what matters most as the world changes?
I think I would tell him to feel secure in questioning things, take a critical approach to everything, and learn. And that would be an enforcement of what I already did. Because basically, but it's so basically a confirmation you're going the right way. Keep going.
Because I have made a short questionnaire for my subscribers, and I would like to discuss with you just a slightly tiny bit about what they answered. Actually, one of the questions was, do you currently use AI tools in your daily life? And more than 80% they said yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Probably you have more interested audience. So you have to take that into account, that your audience would be more interested in this area, or curious at least about new technologies.
But as we have mentioned earlier, that a lot of people, they are scared or afraid, etc., by these tools, AI tools. Then 80% of them, I mean, it's like, I know there's a lot more people to interrogate as such, but just saying that already 80% they are using in their daily life.
It's a conundrum, because I think there are a lot of people using this, both because they're curious, but also because they are forced to in their work. So even though you would get a high percentage saying we're worried or even scared about this, you will also get a high percentage that says we are already using it. Also from the point of view that we are as digitalized a society as we are. So a lot of people will be using it, even if they are scared or worried.
Another question was, where does AI show up most in your life? And more than 66%, they said work or their business, and learning or studying. So again, as we have mentioned earlier, as you just said as well, that you are using it for those two things.
Yeah, I think that's to be expected. A high percentage will encounter it through their work, in some sense. And I think the number should actually be higher, because there is a certain number of people. As I said, when a technology is sufficiently implemented, we no longer call it that. We no longer think of it as artificial intelligence. So the number is probably higher.
And I also asked what excites you most about AI right now, and the two main things was make it life easier and to boost creativity. So that's quite interesting.
That's very encouraging, actually. That is the point that people make. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, they left some questions for you specifically, and one of the questions was, how dangerous is it for children to have access to AI advices?
Again. Yeah, no, I think I understand what they mean. Again, I think it's not dangerous in itself, but as with any other technology, I think parents need to be involved with their children and looking into how they use it and because you shouldn't leave. We see now a lot of examples of even adults using these systems as therapy. And this is not a good idea. We need that critical sense. But the only way, on the other hand, to get that critical sense is to use it. And I mean, but so for children, you need their parents to guide them, to be there with them, and this will also, of course, be a learning process for the parents as well. It has to be. So, but in itself, you shouldn't necessarily prevent children from accessing or using AI, but just be aware of how they're using it.
But Mark, I have read some articles in America, for example, that quite a lot, I would say, of teenagers killed themselves asking questions and taking advices from an AI. So they arrived to that point of just, taking like for real, or AI itself was advising to the teenager. It's really sad.
Yes,
so that's why
I definitely think it is, because if we don't know any better, then these kind of things happen. I mean, you could even say that teenagers may be an extra vulnerable group. They're at a vulnerable stage in their lives and so on. But all the more reason for them to know what they're dealing with. They have to learn from when they're very young how these systems work. How can you can't trust what it says. You could maybe use it as an indicator, but that would mean going to someone else and asking for further advice. But you need to know the systems in order to be aware, so you don't just accept uncritically what it said. It's not just a question that is limited to AI systems. It is dealing with the way we as parents communicate with our children. I mean, teenagers are a vulnerable group, and you need to be more present as a parent. There are limits to how far you can go into their lives, but you need to show an interest and talk to them and so on. And this is not that different from how the world was yesterday, in a sense. You need to. It's not just parents. It's schools. It's all of the contexts that teenagers and children are a part of. That has to be aware of where are they? How are they doing? And then this is not a new problem. This is it may be more enhanced. It may be an enhanced problem when you put AI into the mix. That may be so, but it's basically about being aware of where a person is.
I have a really interesting question here. Why do other experts not recognize the built-in bias of the system and the reason you can't escape that bias? And to follow up, why do so-called experts not understand stateless is not toneless?
I don't think that experts don't recognize that there is bias in AI systems. I think most experts at least recognize that this is the case. It's very difficult to deal with because the reason for this bias being there is because the bias is in our societies. It's a reflection, as we spoke of earlier, of the bias in our society. So it's difficult. It's not impossible, and it's something I know that a lot of scientists are working on, actually taking out this. But it's also difficult, and that's perhaps what the person is asking about, is that it's not all experts who actually recognize what kind of bias and what the consequences actually are, because it's so built into the way we think. It's basically human bias we're talking about. So it's very difficult for the people who actually make the systems to separate themselves from the biases they bring as well. And if you can't do that, then you can't really work with the biases in the system. And that's where a lot of the discussion is right now. What kind of bias, what are the consequences of the bias that is in the system?
One last one, promise. How do you think Europe will find its way in a race where we are currently so far behind USA and China? Asked by Kör.
Well, I would say that we need to recognize what our strengths are. I think we can compete, but we can compete a lot about developing AI. We can make sure that the systems are AIs are human centered in their development. Our strengths is some said that Europe has regulatory power. I think it's more than just regulatory power. It's about showing the way. It's about being ethical champions, so to speak. And if we build this into our systems and we champion this way of having our AI systems, then we are the ones who are delivering those systems as well. So in a sense, I think it can become the thing that we can compete on, the thing that will make us strong, as compared to China or the United States.
So, Mark, if someone wants to reach out to you, curious about something related about AI or something else, how can they do so?
Well, they can contact me through AI Portalen. I think you can probably put this in the show notes, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. They will have everything available.
Yeah, and they're more than welcome to contact me through that. So that'll be probably the easiest.
Thank you so very much, Mark. It was really, really a huge pleasure for me to have you here today. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great.
Mark showed us so much clarity and honesty, not just about what AI can do, but about what it should never replace in us, our judgment, our responsibility, and our humanity. I'm leaving this conversation both more helpful and more alert, and I know many of you will do too. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with someone who's thinking about AI repercussions, because this conversation shouldn't stay in a bubble. If you want to reach out Mark, You can find him on LinkedIn, Mark Sinclair Fleeton, or at fleeton.dk. And if you haven't already, follow Rewire Advice on Spotify and YouTube. I really appreciate it. Until next time, stay sharp.